Assalamualaikum and greetings to everyone. Welcome to Verify Halal TV. I am Nur Iziati and I will be the host for today. Our guest today is Mr. Zalman Putra Ahmad Ali, the Director of Halal Development of the Islamic Religious Council of Singapore, MUIS. Assalamualaikum, Cik Zalman. How are you today?
Waalaikumsalam. Alhamdulillah. How's everyone there?
Alhamdulillah, we are also very fine here. Thank you so much for accepting our interview today.
Yeah, I'm very happy to be here. I think for all the viewers, Salam al-Hijrah. So everyone is having a new direction for the new year, inshallah. I'm currently the Director of Halal Development in Singapore, which is basically the unit that regulates halal certification in Singapore. I took up this role sometime in January 2021, but I've been with the organisation since almost 25 years. I've held various portfolios, beginning with mainly in areas like research and policy, and I've covered aspects like strategic policy and areas like education and so on. So my focus has always been in terms of my areas of interest is in research, and when I was doing my masters, my area was relating to this idea of religious resurgence or revivalism, including particularly Islam within the region. So halal is actually an area which is quite a major indicator of this resurgence, and something that when I took over the role, I see it as something that has a lot of potential, and what we want to see is in terms of how religion can play a very positive role in society, and halal itself actually, if it's done right, can be that means to promote the kind of Islam that we want for the wider society, including especially globally. So I was designated this role in early 2021. So my role is very much trying to strengthen the way we manage or regulate halal certification in Singapore. So our role is basically to ensure that, and our focus is especially on building that trust with our Muslim consumers in Singapore. So it's mainly about assurance, consumer assurance. However, if you realize over the years, especially in recent times because of the pandemic, we see there's a lot of impact on our businesses. So we cannot run away from the fact that we have to ensure that our processes when we do halal certification is able to be facilitative to businesses. So that's where when we look at halal, it is not just about the consumer, which is giving assurance, but also to ensure that we are able to have a pro-enterprise orientation to make it facilitative. So it's finding this balance between how we manage our consumers as well as making our businesses are able to participate in the halal industry, and at the same time provide the right kind of options for our consumers. So this is where eventually we'll have a whole ecosystem of halal, and we want to ensure that this is something that is sustainable in the long term. So our aspiration for in terms of when we go into halal is, as mentioned, halal is not just about our diet and so on, but we want to build halal as a bigger concept, halal and tayyib. So this is where halal has to be something which is more universal in terms of trying to project a very ethical kind of approach, a lifestyle, that issues of consumption, issues of respect to environmental sustainability, animal welfare, So these are things that we have this aspiration, and we want to move the way we manage halal towards that kind of direction. We started halal very early in the 70s, but it was only later that it became more organized, and now we are seeing a very rapid growth of halal establishments in Singapore. So one of I think very useful, something that's benefited Singapore, and because Singapore is very focused on building social cohesion, meaning that we want all the different communities, right, to be able to mix and be able to interact with one another. So what halal has been able to achieve for Singapore is that with the certification of more eating establishments, dealing with different types of cuisines coming from different nationalities and so on. So this is where our communities, whether Muslim, non-Muslims, are able to dine together. And this is where I think what halal has been able to achieve is to facilitate this greater social cohesion. So it's something that we feel that personally when I come into this role, we feel that this is something that we really satisfaction that we see especially in the context of Singapore society. But of course, it comes with challenges because if you see, for example, in Europe, there are pushback, right? People who have a certain understanding of halal, which they see something which is quite negative. But I think in the Singapore context, we have been able to explain. Through halal, we've been able to explain more about the religion itself and how the Muslims live and so on. So this is where it is actually an opportunity for us to start a conversation with different communities. And over time, we are seeing this. There is people. The other communities recognize kind of our dietary requirements and so on. So it has facilitated a lot in terms of whenever we do events, people are able to ensure that these are actually prepared for. So these are things that I think when we are looking at halal industry, these are the kind of things that we really benefit more in terms of when we look at halal. Yeah, so MUIS was established immediately, after Singapore's independence in 1965. So we were established as a part of an Act of Parliament. There is a legal framework called the Administration of Muslim Law Act. So it was in 1968 that the MUIS was formed. Of course, initially, because the community is something which is quite new, but it's actually a structure which is a legacy from the colonial system in the region, in the Nusa Tenggara, right? So it's something that has been there, but the Singapore government decided to establish this as part of facilitating the kind of Muslim requirements that we need to have. So in Singapore, for example, we manage our mosques, we run our Islamic education. So having this legal framework which runs through MUIS, we're able to manage some of these institutions. Halal only started in 1970s when there was some demand for halal to have this kind of halal certification. But only, as I mentioned, in 1990s onward, that's where we organize and have the proper systems in place. So MUIS recognized that halal is not only for the purposes of the community, but because over the years the businesses are also exporting products, food products, which are exported to other countries as well. So this is where our halal branding or halal logo has been very important for international trade. So this is something that MUIS's role in halal particularly has evolved over time. Yeah, but we will continue to play this role, and I think we want to ensure that our relationship with the community is maintained, because fundamentally it's about trust. Trust between the MUIS and the community, trust between MUIS and the government, and of course trust between the Muslim community and the larger Singapore society. So whatever that we do has to be fundamentally about trust. This is something that we hope that we can strengthen as we go forward. Yeah, and so in fact, I think similar with Malaysia, halal is, many of the companies which apply for certification are the ones who are non-Muslim companies, because they are the ones who require the assurance, especially from our Muslim consumers. So I think over the years there has been greater appreciation, and many companies, the likes of the normal food chains like McDonald's, KFC, and all that. These are the ones that have been very early on participated and be part of the certification that we cover. We also see a lot of smaller companies, SMEs and all that, who also wants to serve the Muslim community, and they have been able to be part of this industry as well. So I think the benefit for them is that because of they are able to access a bigger market, Muslim market as well as the non-Muslim market. So that's where they find value. But of course, the challenge for many of the companies has always been the process. So the cost of certification and all that. So this is something that we acknowledge, and we want to, as much as possible, to simplify these processes, focusing on the more important things, and to ensure that it makes it more seamless for many of these companies to be able to certify. Because if you are able to project that halal or Islam is not something which is very difficult or onerous, right? So that's where it also gives a very positive image of Islam itself to many of our non-Muslim businesses as well. So they would like to enjoy, we want them to enjoy working or have a good experience when it comes to halal certification, instead of making it something so difficult and painful for them. We currently, I think in terms of number of establishments, over at least about 5,000 in Singapore. These are mostly eating establishments because our halal certification is very much focused on food. We do not certify, very little that we put certify non-food. So 30%, about 70% is eating establishments and 30% are those that do manufacturing product development and so on. So the ones that cover food is the one which is the main one. In terms of international certification, we do not certify because our legal framework allows us to only do local. But we have what we call a subsidiary or another group what we call MUIS Halal, which is outside of MUIS but related to MUIS, which does international certification. So they do certification for countries which do not have certification bodies or very few certification bodies, for example in East Asia and so on. So, but very much the focus of our MUIS certification is in Singapore, and we are seeing these numbers growing. 5,000 is, I think in the last few years has been growing very rapidly. Relatively smaller than maybe in Malaysia, but for the context of Singapore, I think it's quite significant. Yeah, so according to that, I think you're referring to the DINA standard, right? The report by DINA standard. So Singapore is actually 7th in terms of across the different countries. We are number 7 in terms of we have the enabling ecosystems to be able to manage halal, and we are the first in terms of the non-OIC countries. So similarly, we also have been over consecutive years. We are first when it comes to non-OIC country in terms of the Muslim travel under the Crescent Rating Report. So sometimes these are things that we didn't intentionally wanted to achieve that, but because our focus has always been the local domestic needs there. But because we have provided those infrastructure, somehow it has facilitated our other stakeholders to be able to build some of this into something that is very quite useful for in terms of the global context when it comes to Muslim travel and so on. So in the context of MUIS, we don't really have a clear specific strategy to do this, but we encourage the businesses to drive. This is the private sector kind of initiative. But our goal, as I mentioned, is to be more facilitative, make our regulatory framework something which is easy for everyone, and so that for businesses it's easy for them to participate in the sector. So we want to make that facilitative. As I mentioned, our focus has always been just on food products because our perspective is that not everything has to be certified. Of course, in other countries they may certify, but for us, because our resources are finite, that means we don't have many resources, manpower and so on, so we have to focus, and that's where food is always the main focus. But of course, in recent times there has been expectation to halal requirements imposed on non-food as well. So for exports where our businesses may have to enter those markets, then we may have to have the capacity to certify some of this non-food as well. But it's something that we in terms of domestic context, it's not something that we emphasize. Right? So the food is our main focus, especially. Similar like any other country, right? Impacted by COVID, the businesses were impacted significantly, very severely, and especially with respect to issues of manpower, right? There's a manpower crunch, and as I mentioned, we deal a lot with the eating establishments. So the F&B industry especially has a very significant manpower crunch. And after COVID, because many of our businesses also depended on many of foreign talent and so on. So after COVID, many of them went back to their respective countries. So it has accentuated this problem. And for halal especially, because you know that when it comes to eating establishments, we require some Muslim staff to be employed. So that's where also another even more difficulty to be able to find Muslim staff to be able to be employed in some of these companies. So it's something that many of these businesses face. And of course, rising business costs because of the disruption to supply chain, right? Because of the war and so on. So these are things that has impacted the businesses. So, but I think we are seeing some improvements. While there was a slight dip in terms of the number of applications during COVID, but now we are seeing growth again. So we hope that this will continue to develop. We will try our best to make our processes, as I mentioned, very facilitative to the businesses, without compromising, of course, on the standards and our halal standards. Yeah, I think the use of technology is very important, and verifying halal is just, one of the important platforms that allows our consumers to have better access to information. Credible information. I think that's very important. I do hope there are more platforms like Verify Halal that is able to facilitate this for both the consumer side as well as the businesses. And I think technology is the way forward, because I mentioned our resources are finite. We don't have enough manpower to totally grow, to be able to run the industry. So we need the use to leverage technology to be able to make things more efficient, make things simpler, and we are hoping that through this use of technology, we will accelerate the application process and so on, so that our businesses will not will have disruptions to their operations and so on. So similarly for MUIS, we are trying to explore various types of technology, and we hope that going forward there will be more the kind of different range of technologies that we hope to be applied within the halal sector. So Verify Halal, I think, has done well to be able to bring in a lot of this data. So we hope that all the consumers, not only in Malaysia but also globally, can also tap on this, and we will even create more systems that can interface with some of these platforms. So for us, when it comes to fake news or fake information, right, we also have a department which handles public education. So we educate the public through the use of social media, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, to educate them in terms of the correct understanding of halal, as well as to be more discerning when it comes to fake news or viral news, because this can be quite disruptive, can impact businesses. So we have seen several cases in the last few years because of viral news and fake news, right? It has affected not only the businesses but also even the credibility of our certification bodies. So we hope that the public becomes more discerning and be more careful when it comes to this, when they receive information. So public education is key. So it's something that we are investing a lot, and we hope that this can be expanded to, not only Singapore but generally globally. So as I mentioned, in recent years we have given more attention to public education, and for us the perspective, the priority is of course from the Muslim consumers, because I think we also want to make sure that Muslim consumers don't demand certain aspect of halal which becomes too excessive. We want them to practice this reasonable practice, because the more they demand, then certification becomes as expected, and it will add more cost. This cost is not only just it will transfer to the businesses, and the cost then will in turn transfer back to the consumers. So we also do not want to raise such costs, but also we want them to really have a very correct understanding of how they understand halal, and we want them to be empowered, meaning that we can't expect consumers to always be over dependent on the halal mark or the halal logo. So they must be able to read labels, for example, and be able to make their own decisions. So it's something that we're trying to impart this knowledge to the wider community in Singapore. And for the business side, it's also to make them sensitive to the Muslim requirements, so that they are able to comply to our requirements. Sometimes they may apply for halal certification, but they may not take it seriously. So this is where we hope that through our education, our engagement with our stakeholders, they become very appreciative. So we reduce the number of breaches. Sometimes we see a lot of breaches by these companies. We want them to be able to comply well, and they don't breach, especially the very fundamental core areas, like in the having pork in the premises or this kind of things. So those are things that we hope will not happen. And this is where education is very key to both sides, consumers as well as the businesses. Yeah, so we use cat persona to be able to make it more light-hearted. So we want to make it something that can connect, especially the young and so on. So We try not to make it too officious. We get our officers sometimes to be part of TikTok and so on, but in a very light-hearted way. So they can find us on Halal SG on Instagram as well as TikTok and Twitter. So if you follow our Twitter, you can see that we try to make it very light-hearted and very easy for people to follow the kind of discussion. Sometimes the topic can be very dry, so we try to make it easy for everyone to digest some of this information. Now, of course, this is we segment our audience for the more older, mature audience, or the ones that our elderly parents and so on. So we use other platforms which are more suitable for them. But for the younger ones, that we want to encourage this understanding from young, and we try to make it easy for them to digest some of this information. Yeah, for Singapore, because we are not a Muslim majority country, right? So Singapore is actually an open market. There's no requirement for them to be halal in order for them to export to Singapore. In fact, Singapore is it's an important country because we don't have the local agriculture and so on. Of course, we have a goal in the next by 2030 to have 30% of our food to have locally produced because of food resilience. But that is something which is ongoing. But generally, our companies, our businesses here import products from various countries all over the world. The halal requirement is only required for those halal certified establishments in Singapore. So when we check, we must ensure that they are certified halal. And the countries that, the certification bodies that are exporting those products, we need to ensure that they are recognized by us, and that means they are aligned with respect to the standards that we have. So we want to encourage businesses to, if in the country they do not have any certification body, to eventually have the kind of local system that can allow them to be certified there, and we can recognize them, and then eventually they can export to Singapore. So we have some countries that started to have interest, especially in Europe and so on, which may not have, or may have very few certification bodies, but they are interested to export to Singapore. So we do have to support them, to advise them on how to go about to be able to get the certification they require in their respective countries. Yeah, so I think we welcome all businesses from everywhere, because our local businesses and our local consumers we consume a lot from various products and we are quite, Singapore is quite cosmopolitan, and we have products from all over the world. Yeah, so as I mentioned at the start just now, our aspiration for halal is to make it universally accepted, and something which is not just about legal issues with respect to food and so on, but people see it as something which promotes ethical lifestyle. So halal and Tawhid comes together, and we want people to welcome or celebrate this move towards halal, and businesses see this as something which is of value to them, not purely from a commercial reason, but from the perspective of ethical lifestyle. So it's something that we want to encourage our community to have that kind of mindset, so that they don't just look at halal as very individual issues with respect to consumption and all that, but something that we hope that can be better. And of course, the challenge of halal is now is that as the industry grows, it tends to become more commercialized, and it might dilute the whole intent of halal in respect to Islam. Because Islam has very pure reasons for the purpose of halal. So we want to ensure that this is maintained, and for the whole industry itself, they have to be cognizant of this, so they do not become digress, and this become overly commercial, and it loses the essence of the spirit of what Islam wants from halal, and being halal and having halal and Tawhid. Yeah, so it's something that we hope. We aspire for the market, and we want to ensure that both the consumers, industry recognize and understand how halal should be evolving. Yeah, so these standards were developed very early on. So it is still quite, as I mentioned, because we focus a lot on food. So the focus is mainly on the religious component as well as the technical component. So, but we are reviewing some of these standards because the industry or the landscape has changed. So we hope that this can be expanded, and globally also there are standards that we think we may want to look at and try to benchmark or align ourselves to some of those standards. So the standards that we have today is enough for the domestic needs. in terms of trying to make sure that the way the businesses are able to organize themselves, having the right systems, as well as make sure they fulfill the religious requirements. But as we go forward, the landscape is becoming more complex, so our standards also have to evolve. So it's something that we are reviewing this year, and we hope that in the coming years we'll be able to introduce new standards and strengthen them further. Yeah, so the importance of having some of these events, I think is the importance of networking, the ability for our businesses to connect with the various industry players, with our different stakeholders, including regulators and so on. So we do participate in some of these events just to understand how the industry is growing. So I think these are opportunities for the different industry players to connect and be able to work together. And I think through such interaction, we hope that it can generate new ideas, new thinking, and new ways of doing things. I mean, working halal is the opportunity for me to connect with various people from the consumer side to even, the businesses, and understand further the kind of challenges that they face, and also connect with international partners. With fellow regulators in other parts of the world, as well as certification bodies, and it exposes us to the cultures or the Muslim environment or they operate in, which is a learning process for us, something that we learn. At the same time, there were also many challenges that we face with respect to when it comes to things that happen beyond our control. That means our supplies are recognized by other countries, certification bodies, but things happen in other parts of the world. So how do we manage that kind of crisis, for example, in terms of dealing with the local consumers and how to deal with the foreign authorities and so on. So these are things that, while it is quite challenging, but I think it's something that is very memorable for us in terms of how we learn in this process. So whenever we experience something like that, it's something that we hope can make us better. And I think this is where when we connect with all these other players, we just hope that whatever that we do will be strengthened further and can be better, and ultimately for the community. I think Muslim tourists, they want to fulfill their needs, right? Whenever they travel. So it is not just about having the halal options, but I think it's also the whole experience. We have the community itself, I think, provides that kind of experience. So this is where, as I mentioned, it's about the ecosystem itself, how we partner with the different players within the community. So in the context of Singapore, we have businesses which try to cater not only in terms of the needs, but also even like prayer spaces, things that consumers, the Muslim tourists usually look for, and also programs, activities that also enthuse them to come to Singapore and wanting to experience Muslim life as well in Singapore. So this is where there are private players which are doing this, and for us, we connect with them and we try to understand, but they are the ones who try this. So we support them wherever we can. Yeah, I think I would like to thank Tunai and Verify Halal TV for giving me this opportunity. So I think what I hope is that halal can be properly understood and appreciated by everyone, and I think there are many opportunities for people to be able to have access to this information, and Verify Halal TV is one of those platforms which provide such information. So I encourage people to be able to find such information that can enlighten them further about halal. And as I mentioned again, we hope that halal will become something which is broader and of universal value to everyone, and it gives the kind of impact that we want in terms of Islam to not only to Muslims but to the wider global society.
Alhamdulillah. Thank you so much, Mr. Zalman Ali, for the advices and also the encouraging notes to us, and also the halal industry all over the world. So we also from Surunia Commerce Neighborhood would like to thank you for your time today, and we really hope that MUIS and also halal industry in Singapore will further develop and excel, especially in promoting halal as a lifestyle and reach broader and universal information, not only to Muslim but also to the non-Muslim universally. Inshallah, Amin. Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.